tell you.
But I love it, and I love it on my wall.
And before we head off to auction, I couldn't come to Belfast without delving into the incredible music scene that kicked off here in the 1970s. It was the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Amidst all this, and some would say because of it, a new punk sound was bursting out of Belfast. Back in the late 1970s, a time when shops had bomb-proof shutters and there were checkpoints all over the city. It was only the police, the punks and the army who were out after 6 p.m. Punk bands could be found performing in clubs and pubs, hidden away in dark, dingy basements around the cathedral part of town. Today, this is an openly thriving music quarter, and there's one man who's been walking these streets since the 1960s, and that's Terry Hooley. Terry has been at the cutting edge of Belfast's music scene for over half a century, and he's organised gigs, run record shops and launched whole musical careers. Terry, it's brilliant to meet up with you, and I just had to bring you here because this is the site, the infamous site of the old Harp Bar. Tell me about it back in the 70s.
Well, the Harp Bar was this really grungy, dirty bar. And then at night time, we turned it into a punk club because we couldn't get gigs for our bands. And we set up the Harp Bar, and then you saw hundreds of kids here.
Really?
And it didn't matter whether you were a Catholic, it didn't matter you were a Protestant, it didn't matter, as long as you were a punk. It was the first time in a decade that young kids had a place where they could go. When I grew up in the 60s, it was all colourful and everything was wonderful. Belfast in the 70s was black and white. And then when I saw punk, and the energy and the excitement was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the police came in and the kids all shouted at them, and they brought the army in and they broke up the gig. And I went, oh, gee, I love the anarchy of all this. And the kids had no fear.
Sure.
The kids had no fear whatsoever.
Was this your vision?
Well,
did you think this is what this place needs?
Yes, well,
and it hasn't got it.
Yeah, well, it was, and my idea was not so much to run a record label. My idea was to put Belfast back on the music map.
And Terry certainly did that with his record shop, Good Vibrations, which became an institution for generations of music lovers growing up during the Troubles. So what did the shop come to be for the people that went in there?
Well, I think it was a little oasis in a desert of madness.
Yeah.
And it was a light in the darkness.
Given the times, did religion and tension find its way into your shop?
Nobody was interested in religion in our shop, but there were people outside the shop who were very much interested in religion, and very often I get beat up for bringing the kids together. It gave me a purpose in life, and it was just great for me to be able to turn people on to really, really good music. Music unites people, and that's the gist of it, and it does. And Good Vibrations is living proof of that.
As well as being a haven for Belfast's disaffected youth, Good Vibrations was also a creative hub which launched the careers of bands like Rudy, The Outcasts, and by far the most successful, The Undertones. I've arranged to meet up with Mickey Bradley, the band's bass guitarist, at the venue of the band's first Belfast gig, organised by Terry Hooley in the summer of '78. So it's here in this student union bar that you took Belfast City by storm.
Yeah, we did. And that sounds like a very sort of proud thing to say, but I think we did when I look back on it.
Young kids.
Yeah, up from Derry, 70 miles away. And it was called A Battle of the Bands. And it was the first time we'd ever played here. I've since spoken to some of the other bands, and they kind of looked at us, and some of them thought, who are these guys, you know, a bit of yokels coming up from Derry. But then when they heard us, they were like, oh, right, this is some serious competition.
Wow.
Ooh, baby, baby, what can I
It was a good crowd. I remember kind of thinking when we started playing, we just really enjoyed it. So we knew that we played well.
Did you win the Battle of the Bands?
The results have yet to be decided. But you know what? It was reviewed in the NME, and we were the ones that were talking about.
Right, okay.
But you also, if you're in a band, you know if something's going well.
Here comes the summer. Here comes the summer. Here comes the summer.
You must have been really nervous because here you are coming to Belfast. Okay, look, it's a big city, and you know the punk scene was happening at the time. All those bands around here.
Yeah.
Not a lot of competition in Derry, was there?
In Derry?
Were you the only band?
we were the punk rock scene in Derry.
Well, you got your heads down, you had plenty of time to practice, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. John was writing songs. The rest of us started writing songs too. Yeah. And we were playing for an hour and a half every Friday and Saturday night. It builds up your rock and roll muscles, put it like that.
Yeah. Considering what was going on at the time in Derry, you know, with all of the troubles, the lyric wasn't about anything to do with that. You wrote about sort of normal teenage things.
We were inspired by records, and they always wrote about boy meets girl, boy loses girl, you know, about teenage frustration and so on. Whenever I look back on it, that's kind of half the reason why John didn't write directly about the troubles and so on. We wanted to write songs which sounded like the records that we loved. The day after we played here, we went into a studio in Belfast, a little studio called Wizard Studios, which Terry Hulley had booked for us, and we recorded Teenage Kicks.
Teenage Kicks was the first single the Undertones ever recorded.
We recorded it in June. By September, we got the phone call that the records had arrived in Terry's shop.
Teenage dreams, so hard to beat.
What we had to do was we had to go up to Terry's shop and help fold the covers. And that was us. We were on our hands and knees on the ground doing that. That's what Terry got the bands to do.
I wanna hold her tight. Get teenage kicks right through the night.
This is the first single.
This is the first single, a much tattered, a much beloved edition of it.
I like the sellotape. Look, it's
Sellotape to preserve
That's
it.
good, isn't it?
Yeah. My mother loved sellotape.
Yeah.
My mother would sell it every page. Look at that. And that was
at
taken
that.
in a back lane in Belfast.
Nearly the same haircut still.
But that is a guy.
Do you know what? That's a guy that's really happy.
Yeah,
that is a guy that's over the moon.
Absolutely right. And there's Fergal. Fergal wearing black vinyl trousers. He never ever wore black vinyl trousers. He wore them just for that day. There was a great excitement too because that was a big deal for us to make a record.
Teenage Kicks, you know, described by John Peel as the best single he's ever heard. And he played it twice for the first time, didn't he?
Yeah, it struck something in John Peel. Once John played it, then we started getting phone calls from record companies which had turned down our demo tape a few months earlier. That's the way it works.
What was it like when you said to your mum and dad, we're nipping over to London to do Top of the Pops?
You know what? They knew before I did because I was out. I was out that morning, and Damien O'Neill from the band had to run up to our house because we didn't have a phone.
Sure.
He ran up to the house and says, "Would you tell Michael when he comes back and that we have to go to London
Pack his
today?"
kit.
Yeah, because we're going to Top of the Pops. So by the time I got home, my mother had
Glowing.
She bought me a new pair of pajamas.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and that was kind of because you're going away, you know.
I need excitement, no, I need it buying. And it's the best I've ever hired.
Once Teenage Kicks happened, you know, once that was a hit, Terry didn't say, "I own the rights to that record."
Many people would.
Oh, yeah, of course. He says, right.
That's incredible.
He says, that's your record there.
Yeah.
You know, for that, I just undying admiration for the man, you know, throughout all those years, because he genuinely was never interested in money.
Get teenage kicks right through the night.
Well, it really is hard to believe that iconic song was first performed almost 40 years ago and it went on to become a modern-day classic. It really is the perfect pop song. It has as much energy today as it did when it was first played here at Queen's University, Belfast, back in the summer of 1978. Back at the valuation day, we've been working flat out. Our
£440 and selling.
And here's our first item, and let's hope they don't have to carry this huge piece. Really is showy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Perfect condition.
It's going under the hammer now. This is a tricky one. This is it.
180, 200.
Brilliant.
Who's right?
200.
You won.